Joe is a villager. He lives in a society dependent on the production of things to be bought and sold in the marketplace. Emeralds are used for the purchasing of these things, especially the things important to life, such as food, water, and housing. He has two paths to obtain money. By either starting to sell his own things in the marketplace by producing his own goods in a workplace owned by himself, or by working for a Steve. Most villagers like Joe don't have the means to build his own workstation, so they usually work for a Steve. Joe sells his labor power to a Steve in exchange for a wage. Villagers can work a variety of jobs like farming, blacksmithing, and even redstone engineering. Joe chooses to become a librarian, using his labor power to transform an object of less value like a book, which would cost 2 emeralds by default, to an object of greater value, like a mending book, now costing 200 emeralds. In a week, Joe makes 400 mending books in a factory with other villagers, creating 79,200 emeralds worth of transformed value. By the time he has paid his wages, though, he only gets 15 emeralds. Where did the other 79,185 emeralds go? Steve got those 79,185 emeralds instead, despite Joe being the one using his mind and muscle to create those mending books in the first place. This exchange must happen, else Steve would have gone under a long time ago. Steve uses that money to expand his business and hire more villagers for his enchantment book operation. Joe feels as though this is unfair. Steve wasn't there making books at all. Why should he get those emeralds? He can't even exercise his mind to make decisions that could help him and his fellow villagers out, like wearing armor to protect them from zombies entering their workstations. Steve doesn't feel that is a worthy investment, even though it is a popular opinion amongst the librarians. This all results in him becoming alienated, for he can't exercise the usage of his mind in the workplace the majority of his days reside in. For this, there is a fundamental conflict between the villagers and the Steve. Villagers, those that sell their labor power in exchange for emeralds, will always want to have the most emeralds, while Steve wishes to pay them the least amount of emeralds for the most amount of work that he can, and even wants to go as far as to replace them with redstone machines to undercut other Steves. Steve, however, is short-sighted in trusting the machine to save him. Villagers are the only one who can make profit, as they can be paid less than what they make to trade for other things. Since villagers are removed from the workplace entirely, less of them buy Steve's stuff, but since Steve always wants more mending books, he spends more money crafting new redstone machines that drive down the price further, until eventually Steve gets no money to help him make new redstone machines. Steve wants to avoid that scenario as much as possible. He will do anything to increase his profit. He will want to access new marketplaces so more villagers can buy his stuff and more resources can be found to make new enchantment books. He'll pay off the iron golems in the government, who will always obey the Steves since they keep the economy afloat, to go to war on flimsy pretenses for this reason. To make sure villagers like Joe don't notice this, he'll deflect the blame on newly hired villagers from other villages and demonize them as people undercutting the laborers. As if it isn't the fault of the other Steve in that village for allowing their wages to be undercut like that in the first place. Sure, Joe could ask Steve nicely for more emeralds or more armor, but Steve cares more about profit, and that would mean some money would not go to him, so he disregards his complaints. Joe could appeal to the Iron Golem government to establish a minimum emerald law, armor requirement law, even funding to help Joe democratize his workplace. It all relies on the Iron Golems ignoring the wishes of the Steves, who they must obey at all times due to the power they hold in the village economy. And even if the Golems did listen and enact those measures, the Steve could decide to take them away on a whim. What shall the villagers do? How shall they break down the dictatorship of the Steves and form a society where the villagers themselves dictate their affairs? It is in the villagers' interest to take over the operation of the Steves, to seize the mines, the redstone machines, and the crafting tables, and operate it as a democratic workplace. No more shall Steve be choosing the manager, where the next mining operation takes place, or even if mending books should be an item produced. It is the villager's choice from now on. The workplace shall become more efficient without the Steve, for there won't be someone disconnected from the working environment deciding everything. Live information from the lived experiences of the villagers will allow proactive decision making. Yet this can't be done alone. The iron golems would kill them all. They need to form unionized workplaces and form councils of villagers that collectively bargain and strike if demands aren't met, and collect villager consciousness amongst each other. Joe and his fellow librarian can elect someone from his workstation into the council and can recall them if they do not perform to the workstation's opinion to prevent bureaucratic rot. The villagers don't want violence, but they must act in self-defense if the Steves pay off villagers and witches who are formed from villagers downtrodden in life after being displaced from the Steves' very own machinery to fire crossbows at them. Villagers in far-off chunks also saw this issue and thought that forming a centralized party of villagers would alleviate their pains. Their mistake in trusting one party was so huge in that it only allowed the villagers at the top of the party to become the new Steves. Villagers like Joe must avoid this fate by never relying on a central apparatus like the Steve government or a villager party to act on mercy for them. They must take it upon themselves, regardless of workstations, to form self-operating councils with the basis of one villager, one vote to truly establish a world for the villagers. When the villager unions, councils, and cooperatives are strong enough, they must seize the iron golems to help dismantle the apparatus built for the Steves. Steves that try to flee by filling up their shulker boxes with emeralds will have their assets seized, for it is the villagers' labor that produced that to begin with. In order to not disrupt pre-existing trade agreements with non-emancipated chunks, they must still produce for emeralds, while still working to abolish the Steve class. They must force democratization of all workplaces in their chunks. Steves will no longer be the masters then. They'll serve as technical advisors and will work in the same position and power levels as the villagers. New firms must obey democratic commitments in their internal structures. They can't stop there, though. After one pillar of the Steve system falls, so will then another, and it is the villagers' duty to fund the villagers far away in other chunks who wish to enact similar decrees onto the Steves. The end goal of this is to establish villager rule over Minecraftia, to produce mending books, pickaxes, swords, redstone machines, and all sorts of items and structures not for an amount of emeralds, but for usage only. The villages will no longer be ruled by the Steves, but by villagers only.